Okay, this is number 71 from your review packet. They want us to find the derivative of s squared minus 1 to the 5 halves times s cubed plus 5. Okay, so this one is super fun because you have to factor out the least power. But before we do that, let's just find its derivative. And hopefully you notice that, that's the point, is that it's a product rule with a chain rule embedded. So we're going to take the derivative first. 5 halves minus 1 is 3 halves. Don't forget the chain rule. That's the hard part of this problem, believe it or not. Leave the other guy alone. Then we leave the first guy alone, plus s squared minus 1 to the 5 halves. And the derivative of the second one is just 3s squared. Okay, and that's really the main lesson right there. So if you're doing that and you didn't forget the, if you didn't forget the 2s, that's where a lot of kids make the mistake. You're doing good. The next thing they want you to do is factor out and turn this sum into a product. So the idea is to factor out the least power. So if you see these powers here, the least one is 3 halves. So let's factor that out, and we'll see what happens. Also notice we have an s and a s here that we can factor, and also notice that this 2 and this 2 cancels. Okay, let's go ahead and go for it. So what am I going to factor out here? I'm going to factor out an s. Okay, you can see those two right there that I did. And then an s squared minus 1 to the least power of 3 halves. Okay, let's see what's left over. Well, it looks like that 5 is left over. Now I factored out s squared minus 1 to the 3 halves, so he won't be there. There's still, I factored out that s, okay, and I'm left with s cubed plus 5. Plus, okay, now I got to see what happens on this side. But before I do, what might notice is that if I distributed that to this guy here, the s and the s squared minus 1 to the 3 halves to the 5 times the s cubed plus 5, I would get this whole thing. So all I did here was factor out, just the least power and the s. Okay, let's do that again here. Now let's see, I factored out, I didn't get a 3 out, so the 3 will still be there. The 3 will still be there. That was an s squared. I only factored out an s. And then what would be left over here? Well, what would be left over is whatever you would add to 3 halves to get 5 halves. And what do you add to 3 halves to get 5 halves is 2 halves, or 1. So I'll just write s squared minus 1. And again, this kind of happens when you factor out the least squared. And you can check by just taking this thing and distribute it to on this side of the plus sign, and you'll see you get this whole thing here when you add the exponent 1 with the 3 halves over here. Okay, and then they're just cleaning it up now. Let's see what would happen here. It's just a lot of tedious work here. So we got s times s squared minus 1, and we also have let's keep that big old bracket while we clean up the inside. 5s cubed plus 25 plus, now that was a power of 1, so you can distribute that, 3s cubed minus 3s, okay, and let's see if we can clean that up. S squared minus 1, and what would that be? An 8s cubed minus 3s plus 25. And that's really the holy grail of turning a sum into a bunch of products. If you want to get it into a nice simplified form, and you can set those things equal to 0 very easily, and it's just a nice technique to have for that question. Okay.